Following up now on a story we talked about last week, the Disinformation Inc. series from Washington Examiner about the blacklist of conservative sites that was pushed on Microsoft and other vendors to make sure that advertising didn't get included on those sites. It's McCarthy Tactics. Gabe Kaminsky, he joins us. He's the investigative reporter that's been following this at the Examiner. You've got some new information. So the original report showed that the Examiner and Breitbart and a couple of other sites, but boy, I just found out, Gabe, that my website, Town Hall, part of the family of sites here at Salem Media, we're also, I guess, hateful and horrible and not worthy of advertising.
That's right. So we published a blacklist by Microsoft's Xandr, which is a major advertising company that outlined how, for example, Town Hall was labeled by them as false and, reprehensible and offensive. And other outlets.
Reprehensible and offensive. That's good to know.
Yes, and how other outlets such as our own, the Washington Examiner, were labeled as false and misleading. And so we published this, I believe, on Friday, and a day afterward, we heard from Microsoft, who told us in a statement that they are no longer going to be abiding by, they're temporarily suspending their relationship with the Global Disinformation Index, which is the organization that is secretly blacklisting conservative media outlets and feeding blacklist to companies like Xandr and others. And they are also launching an internal investigation into their relationship with GDI.
Well, listen, if that's the case, because a lot of times these corporations will say this stuff and give lip service and not follow up, and I'm sure that Gabe Kaminsky, you're going to be on top of it. But if that is the case and they are suspending these operations and they are going to investigate it, number one, first of all, this is critically important because they're not denying the blacklists exist. Otherwise, what would be the point of suspending operations? This is a concession that, yeah, we've been doing this.
Right. This is obviously a concession that they've, like you just said, they've acknowledged that they have been blacklisting outlets. And we have the internal data to support that from Microsoft that a whistleblower had leaked to us.
Yeah.
And that updated data does not currently list those conservative outlets as with negative classifications, which means that so left-leaning outlets are given an approved tag and conservative outlets do not have any tag right now. So it's unclear if conservative outlets have access to advertising dollars right now, but we do know that they're not being labeled in certain unfortunate ways.
So maybe I shouldn't give Microsoft too much credit for conceding this point because you did the good investigative reporting and had a whistleblower and you had the data, so it's impossible for them to deny it. But secondly, I think, and more importantly, this validates all of the investigations that you've been doing, Gabe. This is a real great result. This is why you got into the business, to be an investigative reporter, because not only did you tell this story, but now you're actually making a difference.
Yeah, we believe this is impactful. We believe this for now is certainly a win for our reporting, but of course, this is contingent on Microsoft conducting its purported investigation, which we'll be following up on weekly to see where that is currently at. And I would note Microsoft is just one of many organizations that subscribe to this blacklist. So there are a whole swath of other groups that are still blacklisting outlets.
So it's the GDI, Global Disinformation Index. They got a lot of their data and recommendations from the Southern Poverty Law Center, and then it was this Microsoft outfit, Xandr, that ended up actually utilizing that information. But what they did with it is that they kept advertising and ergo revenue from these companies, these websites. So is this actionable? Have you talked to anybody, any of these websites or any of these organizations that might actually be suing? Because they can show a loss, they can show damages because of what the Southern Poverty Law Center has done to them or any of these entities along the way.
There have been some conservative news outlets we've spoken to that are, of course, many are very concerned about this. In terms of actionable, I will say we've spoken to several members of Congress. Yesterday, Representative James Comer, chairman of the House Oversight and Reform Committee, had said that he intends to press the Biden administration over the State Department funding the Global Disinformation Index. And other lawmakers that have weighed in have included Jim Jordan, Senator Marsha Blackburn, and Senator Eric Schmidt, and some other powerful Republicans. So I think, they make their comments that are scathing, but a lot of Americans want action beyond that and really want them to do something.
Gabe Kaminsky, Washington Examiner. Great reporting, and thank you for joining us on this. Let's just be clear here. This is a weapon that the left likes to use against people they just disagree with. Now, it used to be called McCarthyism, although, frankly, Senator McCarthy would have never dreamed of anything like this. And, oh, by the way, Senator McCarthy and the House Un-American Affairs Committee back in the 50s, they were actually right. Yes, they were heavy-handed and probably a little unconstitutional in the way they went after some Americans for exercising their freedom to speak out for their political purposes. But they were right that the Soviet Union was infiltrating our government. Alger Hiss was, in fact, a Soviet communist spy. So McCarthyism had a point. This is much different. This is much worse. And I want to drill down on one aspect of what you just heard from Gabe Kaminsky with this enemies list, this blacklist, that's conservative sites. And it's every single conservative site you can imagine. It's anyone who doesn't agree with the left and Democrats in Washington, D.C. They must be blackballed. That's what this list is. But the research arm that helped to develop this list, did you hear it? It was the Southern Poverty Law Center, SPLC. You'll often hear of the Southern Poverty Law Center being cited as a resource in liberal media outlets. And by liberal media outlets, I mean, well, everything that's not conservative talk radio, this cable news channel, and maybe one or two others along the way. CBS, NBC, ABC, MSNBC, PBS, CNN. They'll all do a story about right-wing extremism in America, and they'll always either have an expert or cite a report from the Southern Poverty Law Center. Now, there was a time when the Southern Poverty Law Center probably served some purpose because their main focus was the Klan. You know, that charming, racist Democrat Party institution known as the Ku Klux Klan, the KKK. They were bad. There's hardly any of them left, but those that do remain are still bad. I'm glad the Southern Poverty Law Center was there to wage legal battle against the Klan and on behalf of the victims of the Klan. They were bad people. But now the Southern Poverty Law Center appears to be nothing more than a fundraising wing for left-wing causes. And they create these blacklists not for people who are racist or white supremacists or looking to lynch people in the public square as those Democrat Klansmen did back in the day. No, now they're just going after anyone who is standing in the way of the woke left Democrat Party agenda, anyone who's a conservative. They're standing in the way of you. And by holding conservative Republican beliefs, you end up being the mastermind behind a hate crime, especially if you work for a website. I mean, just look at the Southern Poverty Law Center's website and something they call an action fund. That's a way for them to raise money and then be political active. And the things that they stand up for don't have a whole lot to do with right-wing extremism or hate speech. It's for voting rights or for transgender policies or criminal justice reform, which will put criminals back out on the streets. You know, all the things that Kamala Harris stands for. That's who they are. But they use this camouflage as some kind of objective observer of hate speech in America to push the Democrats' agenda. They are literally a weapon wielded by the left. And in this case, in this story that Gabe Kaminsky and the folks at the Examiner have uncovered, the Microsoft fell for it, or they willingly fell for it. The only way Congress can really get to the bottom of this problem is to bring the Southern Poverty Law Center in front of them, put them under oath, and expose who they really are. More to come on O'Connor Today.